have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Lindy Cowling, and she's worked in the arena of consciousness expansion for over 20 years. We had her on the Sacred Relationship series, and she agreed to come back for the Awakening series, which I was very excited about as well. She really does a lot of work in the areas of channeling, healing, hypnotherapy, mediumship, clairvoyance, and timelining both past and future lives and alternate realities, which is so cool. Her specialism is in humanity's expansion of unified consciousness into the heart, also known as expansion. Lindy, I'm really excited to get into this conversation because this is obviously what I'm passionate about, and I know you're passionate about it as well. So I'm really excited to dive deep into this.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to it as well. What I love about conversations like this is it always brings up a further expansion of our own consciousness and almost creates a shift in awareness, not just for us, but for anybody that's tuning in. So I'm really looking forward to it as well.
Beautiful. So I wanted to actually get into, we were talking about this off camera, and I think this is a great topic. We were getting into the role of pain along the spiritual journey. And as we were talking off camera, you mentioned that, there's a lot of spiritual teachers who they have so much great knowledge and awareness, but they might be living up here and their physical lives need more balancing, or maybe there's pain there. So can we talk about just the role of pain along the spiritual journey and really just explore this and kind of open it up and see what we can find?
Yeah, sure. So, in the 21 years that I've been really, let's say, working in the light worker industry, over and over again, I've come up against a certain set of belief systems that if one is spiritual and got their stuff together, that one kind of sails through that process or that journey and isn't really having any kind of mental or physical pain or sickness. And what I found as I work entirely experientially, which means it's all by my personal and professional experience, is the opposite to be true. And I really haven't encountered one genuine human being on a journey into the heart that hasn't or isn't going through some kind of either mental or physical pain as part of a raising of their consciousness. And if you ask me why, there are many reasons for this. If I start at the top, really, when you're going for transformation, you are switching over from a linear, let's say linear wiring. If we think of ourselves as a house that's wired in a particular way, when you're wired in a linear fashion, once you go through a raising of consciousness, that's switching over, that process gradually switch over from the brain to the multidimensional heart, let's say creating your reality. So the brain isn't absent, but it's secondary. So the emotions run through the heart, the decisions run through the heart, the brain and the personality always still there, but secondary. Once you switch over from that linear circuitry, like a house being wired, to multidimensional circuitry, that is sending out a pulse or a signal to every cell in your body, to your bones, to your muscle, to your fluids, to your lymph, to your DNA. And that signal is saying change, transformation, upgrade, a restructuring of your carbon-based body to a multidimensional crystalline quantum plasma body. So it's a crystalline, but it goes into a quantum based awareness and consciousness. So the whole blueprint changes. So in the early years of a transformation, that's not let's say that's not too challenging. But when it hits the point we've hit now, where it becomes physical, the physical body is physically listening to those instructions and physically changing. So for Harry Potter fans out there, in the Harry Potter films, there's one scene where one of the kids comes off a broomstick, hurts his arm, and then a crazy professor tries to fix the arm, and actually all the bones in the arm go floppy, and then they say, right, you've got to go into the hospital wing, and this is really going to hurt because we're going to regrow your bones. that is what is happening to many of us now. We are getting instructions in our bones and muscles and organs and lymph and everywhere to physically become the physical representation of that upgrade to our consciousness and DNA. And just like it sounds, for some of us, that is excruciatingly painful. I've learned over the years that the younger you are when you go on this journey, well, let's put it this way. Those under the age of 20 are already coming in wired.
Yep.
Automatically, multidimensionally.
Yeah.
But as you're going up in, even up to their 30s, they're getting away with it, a lot of them. But once you're into 40s, 50s and up, the old rewiring has to come down for the new to take place. And that's where many of the people that I really know and actually have followed their work for years are having organ transplants. They're in hospital. They're writhing about in agony. I mean, I'm sitting next to 2 walking sticks here. I haven't been able to walk properly for 6 weeks. So I've been in excruciating physical pain because we've all hit that point at the same time. So what we're basically, the body is saying, okay, I've got the new blueprint. I'm morphing into physically becoming multidimensional. Oh dear, this isn't in alignment in your body. This is out of whack in your body. I've got to restructure that. And it's as uncomfortable, putting it mildly, as it sounds. So what I found over a period of time is those that are coming in, let's say in the younger generations, are not finding the physical part of it anywhere near as challenging because they already have the multidimensional blueprint in place. Those that are switching over as an upgrade process to multidimensional, we are the ones that are finding it really difficult, because if our systems have been running a particular way and they've gotten a little bit, you know, you get into bad habits, let's say, in every sense of the word, that wiring has to come out and an upgrade has to take place. So that's a huge reason. And if you ask me why now, it's because in 2020, that physical embodiment became real. It was no longer conceptual. Once we hit January 2020, everything became physical. So the physical changes happening in you, in me, in the mass population are in alignment with the multidimensional quantum heart timeline that became real and solid and here in us, but also in tandem with the Earth or Gaia, which is part of it at the same time. It all became physical. It was sitting out there in the ethers for a long time, since the 1990s. Now it's here. Now it all got real. So that's why so many people are really finding a lot of big health related stuff coming up. And also for a lot of people, mental, because mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, they all go in tandem. They're not separate, obviously. As this takes place, you're also coming out of what we call separation consciousness. So a linear based consciousness is largely, let's say, separate. It's not in a unified flow. So it's different circuitry.
Right.
As you become more unified and you're switching over again, it's like your body and your mind has 2 sets of instructions, and it knows the one to follow, because the more you get into the heart, the more you lean over into that one, but it's still trying to disassemble and come away from what was. That's emotionally, your emotional baggage, your history, not just in this life and timeline and reality, but in all lives, timelines and reality. Because this became physical in January 2020, we are in a unique period of history where what we are sorting out now is not just for this reality, it's for all our realities. So it's for Jared as Jared in 2020, but Jared as Jared in all realities at the same time that you are in at this moment. So there's a crossover point. We've never seen it in history before, and you're really drawing that line in the sand for all of them. So also for your whole lineage, your ancestry, you're dealing with the most polarized acceleration of energy on the planet. Polarized because it's coming down and it's going to become unified. So everything polarized within you, everything polarized on the outside, you're picking it up like a transmitter. The list goes on. So we can see immediately why this would show up, and we would sense that and feel that and interpret it according to our own unique life experience and personalities. We are going to be sensing it and feeling it. If you're empathic and sensitive on top of that, like I am, like millions of others are, that's a treble whammy, because you feel what the mass population are feeling. I mean, I can't tell you that when I wasn't being able to walk properly is when the whole bend the knee thing came in, and then I can walk, and I thought, what the hell? And literally, whatever's happening in the mass population, I'm actually feeling it physically. So it's quite an extraordinary time to be alive. This ascension in the human body isn't a walk in the park, because we are switching over from caterpillar, we've gone through chrysalis, and to grow your wings, you literally have to go through this physical bit of it. Nobody wants to do the physical bit. But once we've done it, we've done it. We've done it for all timelines and realities. We've done it for infinity, really.
Lindy, I mean, there's so many different threads of conversation where we could go down. So, but I'm going to choose the one that I find most exciting and invigorating. Like the whole, everything, like the whole planet changing and raising. I really see it as, because the internet came out about 30 years ago. So for the first time, information is freely available. And because of technology, this information is available to any class system whatsoever. Like whether you're third world, first world, second world, wherever you are. So it's like for the first time, the planet is really becoming self-aware at a really incredibly quick rate. Like exponentially quicker rate. And so this quote unquote great awakening, which I really just think is just our planet evolving. It's just really evolving really quickly. And as human beings, we are the planet, walking pieces of highly evolved land around. It's really a fun and cool, crazy time to be a part of. But it also, I think, can be incredibly overwhelming, because everything is shifting. Like with this knowledge going out, with information going out, with it being all available to every class system, suddenly people are learning to think for themselves. They're learning to ask the right questions. They're wanting to explore themselves. And so it's really awesome to see, but at the same time, experiencing it in the body, because we all are interconnected in that way. I mean, it can be exhausting. I know for me, when I go to a different country or fly to a different state, either for a seminar or workshop or coaching or for whatever reason, I will feel the collective energy of that place as I fly in, and I'll be like, ooh, this part of my body starts hurting, or I'll be like, ooh, what's going on here? Because we all are connected that way. The yogic view is that the body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. And if you're really sensitive and aware, then you'll be able to feel those fluctuations. So it is a really cool, crazy time where it's like the whole planet is just evolving so quickly. We're not just evolving outwardly. Like we see, Elon Musk wanting to get space travel and privatizing that. And now I think Trump he had an order where he says he wants to create the Space Force. So now Space Force in the US is actually a real thing, which is crazy. So not only are we expanding outwardly as a species, we're also expanding inwardly like the East has been. And so there's just so much expansion going on. And it's like, do we really have the social structures set up in place at a societal level to give housing to this expansion in a safe way?
And I mean, the answer to that at the moment is no, but it's coming. And the reason we don't have it at the moment is so much of the societal structure has an underbelly of very dark, negative energy behind it. So
the shadow.
The shadow, let's call them the shadow forces, have made their move. Come March of this year, they made their move big time. And they're on step number 1. We have 19 more steps to come from the shadow forces yet. So the period of history we're in now, where never have we seen so much mass awakening, so much mass acceleration, everything being so fast, because what arrived and became physical and real, that quantum heart timeline in January 2020, let's say micro and macro, inwardly and outwardly and physically, because it became solid and physical then, that is why the shadow within us, but also these external, let's say, malevolent forces made their move, because they thought, oh my God, too many people have gone into the heart. That timeline is here and real. We're going to lose this one. Too many are waking up. So where I said there are pulses and activations and frequencies coming out that are stimulating us all the time to awaken at speed, because that quantum heart timeline is now. It's the consciousness of now. So the now arrived, and it really is here. It is all now. They're all converging now. That's why it seems faster and faster, because it's going to get to instant. That's the acceleration of consciousness we're approaching. So let's say the dark shadow forces, they are also pulsing out frequencies that are not beneficial to our energy fields, and they are pulsing these out in various ways. So because we are super sensitive antennas, really, we are picking up and transforming into the heart. But there's also, I call them disruptor energies. I've been blowing the whistle on these guys for about 6 years on YouTube now. These are being pulsed as well. So you've got a mismatch of things going on. Now, that pulsing frequency encourages polarization, it encourages fear, it encourages control energies, it encourages, let's say, the artificial timeline, the artificial grid of consciousness. So people are hearing that and sensing it. If they lean that way and they aren't on a path of expansion of consciousness, they might be tempted inadvertently to fall that way. But millions are sensing this global heart timeline within them, and they are leaning the other way. But both ways require huge transformation. It's funny, you know, in the years before I was in the heart, so I was working in energy for years, but I wasn't on the path of the heart then. I vaguely heard of unconditional love, thought I knew what it meant, didn't have a clue till I went through it, and changed as a result of it. So I'd heard these concepts before, and then when one goes through a process where their unified energy is activated and you start to change, it changes everything. It changes your perception, it changes your awareness, it changes your reality. And I naively, because I learned experientially, like I said, I didn't, let's say, study it, I went through it. So with me, I thought, oh yeah, right, chose the path of the heart. This will be easy beans. Oh my God. Actually, the people that didn't choose the path of the heart seem to find it darn sight easier. And if you ask me why, it's because it's transformation. As soon as you decide to ascend in the human body and become more conscious, everything that is unconscious in the world comes up. Everything that's unconscious in your ancestral blood family lines comes up through you. Everything that is unconscious within you as a personality comes up. Everything that's unconscious in the world, the collective, comes up through you. Why through you? Because once you make that decision and you start putting out a different frequency or vibration, you automatically become a catalyst for clearing for the collective. Your own collective first, your own families first, then your town, then your city, then your country, then out to the masses. It's a natural byproduct of it. You become a template within that template. So when you don't know what's happening, which I didn't at the time, I learned it as I was going along. I mean, now I look back and I think, well, if I hadn't learned it as I was going along, I wouldn't be able to help. I think it's just 2.4 million people I've helped in 7 years with that process, one way or another, if I hadn't have actually gone through it as a human being. I think there's a difference between learning about these things and then knowing it conceptually and intellectually, as opposed to going through it and becoming it.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, because so many of the times, and this brings us really, I think, a great transition into spiritual bypassing and pain and purging, because one of the things that I've noticed is, people can think they're living a certain life. Like this is like the ego. You may think you're living a certain way. You may have a perception of yourself a certain way, or the perception of a world a certain way, but that doesn't mean it's true. Like, but so there's that I've definitely had times where I thought I was living a certain way in my mind, but I wasn't showing up as that. And that there was still that discordance between my thoughts about myself and the world and how I was actually being and acting in it. And so like, that's what I love about transformational work and especially doing the coaching process or the healing process, because I'll see an individual and I'll be like, well, look, you think that about yourself and you see the world that way, but your actions and your patterns show very differently. So what's that about? Like, how about we line those up and what would that look like? And I think that's what I see maybe as the role of pain in the physical body. It's like it's almost, if I have to go back and really look at, I've had thousands of coaching and healing sessions at this point, and in my own journey, I've been on this transformational journey since 2012. And so if I had to look at it and draw a good bridge or distinction, I see physical pain as the bridge to who we think we are and how we think the world is, and then fully living in alignment with that. And we can still take on pain from the world. Like I know when I ran 2 retreats last year, and I had about anywhere from 20 to 15 people for both of them. And literally a month before, I felt all their pain. I felt like the souls come in to my awareness. And I was like, yep, I got you guys. I can hold space, on that higher. But then I could also feel their pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could feel it. Like I could feel my body take it on. And I remember, like a week leading up to that, I had to spend a day just soaking in a stream for at least an hour and a half, allowing, the earth and the water just to wash it away and out of my energetic field, because I was taking that on. So it really, I think it's pain as a pointer to what we need to integrate. And sometimes we just might be integrating for other people as well too.
Absolutely. And I think what exacerbates pain more is also that belief system again, that pain is bad. When you're in a lot of pain, it sucks. Something in our personality says, oh no, make it stop. I don't like this, make it go away. And then when it doesn't go away, it's like, oh no, what am I doing wrong? Or what have I done wrong? Or why am I being punished? And all these different things go round and round. And of course that just exacerbates it and adds to it. And often pain, let's put it this way, with my personality, if I hadn't gone through in my life a lot of either physical, mental or spiritual pain, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have made that journey into the heart. I wouldn't have been compassionate. I'd have been quite an arrogant individual. I can see that now. It knocked all those corners off me. The more I actually went through, the more loving I became and the more I went into the heart. And it wasn't an easy way to do it, but I can totally see the bigger picture. It carved me out. And it also gives me that real totally genuine care for other people, because I've been there. I've been there, all sides of that fence, mentally, emotionally, physically, I've been there. And so I really care about alleviating that within people, helping them move through those stages for whatever reason they're entangled with them, and helping them find that path, back home to themselves, who they are, but also to navigate it more smoothly so they don't get perhaps caught up in those cycles of suffering that so many of us get entangled with. And it's been, for me, and when I look at it, when I leave this earth plane, I should look back and say, why on earth did you choose that route? But when I really, to be quite honestly, pain has been probably the greatest teacher, sadly, that I've ever had. Those kind of pains, because all those pains I've usually accelerated significantly as a result of it. I've learned significantly. I've developed as a result of it. I've grown as a result of it. Even though I'm going to say it pains me to say it. It's true. It's entirely true.
Lot of pain here, Lindy. A lot of pain.
There is. There certainly is.
Yeah. So I think this really brings us into a cool topic, because I love this as well too. Is it possible to grow through pleasure? Because I see, this is how I see my relationship to pain and my relationship to pleasure. I think it's very multifaceted. I think really the intersection of pain and pleasure is bliss. Like,
yeah.
And in the great ancient traditions of yoga and all these healing traditions, the highest body that we can experience within our awareness as human beings is the bliss body, Ananda, the Ananda Maya Kosha. And I know for me, I'll never forget it. It was probably about 4 years ago where within my awareness, I had an experience of finally my being just being like, I'm done running from pain. I'm done running from emotional pain. I'm done running from physical pain. Like, I'm not going to allow the avoidance of pain and the movement towards pleasure dictate my life. And I opened into some sensation of bliss, and it was a really whole new experience for me of life. So I guess I want to play and explore with the question, Lindy, can we learn and can we expand through pleasure as well too?
Absolutely. And that brings me to the first point here, which is a really important one that you've kind of brought up for me there is a huge embedded belief system throughout the whole spiritual world, and particularly throughout Christianity, that one has to suffer to achieve redemption.
Yes.
One has to suffer. Look at Jesus on the cross. One has to go through terrible pain to actually be worthy of coming into an inner state of unification and all of that side of it. And I definitely have previously. I don't feel I'm entangled with that now, but I definitely have been, and I couldn't see it at the time when I was, of this whole you have to suffer to be worthy and to be of service. And of course that is baloney, because you can easily go into these archetypal belief system energies and then live your life to that dictate. When you were talking about bliss there, it does make me smile, because I know exactly what you're talking about. And I went through that bliss state, which is actually the human's natural state in the world that we are morphing into, which is coming. It's all part of the process, what we're going through now. What is coming with the butterfly side of it, the wings, when we have our wings as we come through the other side of this, that bliss state, which we find so exceptional, will actually be normal. And that will be us much more conscious than, let's say, much more ascended within our human vehicles, creating our realities. And that bliss state, I mean, when you've experienced it, it feels so fantastic. It's like you realize that you've woken up for the first time, and all your life you were asleep. When I went through it by meeting a connection that stimulated that process of unification to begin within me. And the bliss, I mean, we say the word, but again, until you've lived through it, it's an incredible thing. It turns you inside out.
Yes.
You feel wonderful. There's like miracles. You're walking on air. You're lit up like a Christmas tree. I had a pre-existing illness then. I had no pain whatsoever. All pain disappeared from my body, physical body, completely while that was going on. And you can hold that frequency for so long, and soon we'll be able to hold it all the time. That will be normalized. That will be normal. But because it's been a process, a journey where human beings haven't been at that point yet, but it's now happening. I think I held that state. It was a number of weeks into a few months, and then it started to drop a little bit. And when it drops, it feels awful, because it's like going from heaven to hell, suddenly becoming more physical again. But that is going to become normalized, because that frequency that we touch within ourselves on that kind of higher self level is going to be completely integrated. The higher self, not really up there anymore, but in here. It's all in here anyway. We're going to be living through there. So that bliss state, creating from that bliss state, is going to be fantastic. This whole thing about karma and the karmic wheel, that's coming to an end. all the teachings about karma and you have to suffer because you were a really bad boy or a bad girl in another timeline is coming to an end. It's all coming to an end. All of those, a lot of those teachings, even the thing about the chakra system. I haven't worked on the 7 base chakra system for years. I've been able to see predominantly 12 chakras through the energy field. I largely work between 12 and 15, but there are actually 24, but most of them are dormant within us, including me at this point in time, but they won't be. And also to do with all of this is those things as they fire up and come online. Really what we're doing here is we're learning to access more of who we are. So that bliss is always there. When we leave the earth vehicle, we go back to that bliss. We are now learning that we don't have to leave the earth vehicle to attain that bliss or to feel that. We're doing it in the earth vehicle. And the reason it's challenging is because I like to put it this way. We've been given a massive dollop of clay. I'm going to use the word clay and not the normal word I would use, being mindful of our listeners. But we've been given a massive dollop of clay, of mud, to work with on this to create a transformation with. If we didn't have a massive dollop of it, we'd have nothing to create with. We've got plenty of clay on this planet to create with. As we come through this part of it, it will, I can promise you, become far less polarized. People will come into that neutral 0 point field of their own unified energy. They will start creating their reality, not accidentally creating chaos because they don't know they have a Harry Potter wand in their hand and they're waving it about and all sorts of things are going off. Mindfully creating what they want. And of course, the ball is already starting rolling. We're already starting to see it. Once enough people are doing that, which is coming, we have the physical reality to back that up. Just look at the world changes we're seeing week by week now. I mean, the mind-blowing, and some of it is uncomfortable to watch when it's shadow stuff. You know, this whole stuff about, you know, the real huge, massive child trafficking all over the world and what's really behind it. And people aren't even talking about what's really behind it yet, which is another mind-blowing thing because it's negative and it's extraterrestrial based. But as all this comes out, I mean, you and I couldn't have imagined something like that in March of this year. And yet every week, another thing, isn't it? Boom, boom, boom.
It was so cool. I think I saw an article on CNN where they were like admitting, like CNN reported on UFOs and like the Pentagon released it. And I saw this and I was like, oh, wait, are we like slowly getting, like I've known, I mean, my theory on it is that life already evolved past us on Earth. We don't know how to perceive it, just like a monkey looking at a human being wouldn't know that a human being is further evolved than it. And so like that's been my, not only, you know, my experiences, which I get into some of my other videos, my direct experience, but also like what I see out in the world. So it's like there's this slow normalization of, oh yeah, like we're actually going into a whole new way of living in the world. Like, oh yeah, UFOs are real now. And like major news networks admitting that.
Yeah.
It's like real.
It's incredible. I mean, there's going to be so much stuff that comes out. I mean, even at the beginning of this year, we couldn't have imagined that by March or April, we would be effectively under house arrest over most of the world, walking around in plague masks. And we haven't seen anything yet. It's going to just keep changing so fast. And of course, the more that somebody is in their hearts, the more that their consciousness can see the whole 360-degree view rather than the programmed view of what's coming out of the news and the television, that they can actually really see through the eyes of the heart. The more that physical reality on here is changing and coming down, so the shadow side of it coming down. So we are in a period of change like we've never seen. I don't feel it's going to let up for at least not even plateau for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And we won't see the final outcome of the results of that change till about 2030, I don't feel, 2031. So in this period of time now, we're going to see change that we've never seen in our entire human history. Of course, the biggest area of human change is human consciousness and the relationship of oneself and to others, and the relationship to God, source, the universe, Christ consciousness. That's at the heart of the heart, the relationship to all that there is. That's, of course, going to turn all human relating inside and out. It's already starting to happen. But eventually we're going to get to a stage where everybody's conscious. Those that remain on the earth plane, who want to be living on and creating this reality, let's say new reality, the next chapter that we're stepping into, will be largely conscious, largely ascended within the human vehicle, creating one's reality and participating in that. So they will be connecting with people consciously. They won't need to connect any longer to finish a karmic cycle, or because I want to meet you because you fixed something in me and we fix something in each other. They will be meeting on a level playing field and creating. It's like a complementary oneness, I call it, where it's as a complement. And that instead of that being now and again we see this, it's getting more commonplace. It's going to be all over. In fact, we won't even be talking in these terms in 10, 15 years time, because it will be so normal that we will almost largely have that divine amnesia of how it was before it was like that, because people are going to be changing so fast. We're already seeing it, the evidence of it. It's an incredible time to be alive, an incredible time to be alive and to witness it. And, you know, I think, again, part of that, you know, when you go through these physical changes, like I was talking about the junk DNA, what they call junk DNA, it's not junk at all. It's got loads of programs and let's say codes in it, the fullness of who we are within it, but it's also got the let's say connection to our star seed brothers and sisters. I mean, some of the biggest news I've broken on my channel in the last year is that we're all part star seed. So we are all have relatives that are off planet, and actually, you know, we're off planet at the same time. And, you know, certainly in my work, which has changed beyond all recognition in the last 3 months, just beyond all recognition, is some of my work now is when people are at that point, their consciousness activating, they're in the stargates. Everybody has a stargate inside of them, activating their Merkaba, their, let's say, brothers and sisters, or them in a multidimensional consciousness form that is not rooted on earth, so to speak. They connect up with that, all sorts of stuff going on that really, you know, I couldn't make up. But that's the point we're at in our consciousness now. We're now connecting up all those dots as we're integrating it. And it's all kind of, the way I see it is it's all rushing together and converging. We're in a huge period of convergence here now, where, like I say, it became very, very tangible and physical. And so again, you know, when you're activating, it's almost like it all happens naturally. You know, your own junk DNA, you get access to more facets of who you are. So I often refer to this as diamond consciousness. So if I were working with you in one of those sessions, for example, you would present to me as Jared, but then when I went in on that particular entry point, your higher self presents itself to me, and your higher self rotates a bit like a diamond. So I'd see different facets of the experiences that you're having all at the same time in different realities. And part of you is, let's say, being affected by a reality in your consciousness while you're still here as Jared. We can go sort that out. I've had to cross people over that are stuck in a reality as a ghost, even though they're here now, because in that reality they died and their consciousness didn't go back to the whole. So sometimes I have to integrate them in here, sometimes I have to cross them over to there. All these are things that we weren't actually trained in, because now it's happening so fast. We might be doing 10 or 15 things in a session, but this is all part of that word again, unified. All these bits that we think of as separate aren't separate. They're all one thing, and they're all going on at the same time. So I find these sessions fascinating, but none of them shock me, because I've been shocked so many times over the years now that I know the impossible is entirely possible.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah. I mean, synchronicity and the miracle, like that's just a everyday part of my consciousness now. There's no such thing as, well, like what most people think of as miracles or synchronicities. That's actually my natural state of being now. And it sounds like that's yours as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the power of living from that heart space. I mean, even if we look at the research from Heart Math Institute, when they look at the electromagnetic field that the heart puts out as opposed to the brain, the heart puts out such a bigger electromagnetic field. And within
huge,
that electromagnetic field, there's what physicists call packets of quanta. And those packets of quanta are shooting out within the vicinity. And I really think that's that reflection of the reflection of our consciousness. And I mean, there's so many places that we could go with that conversation.
I mean, there are. I mean, and if we go back to that word bliss again, you know, again, when you have experienced that, and you know, when I've worked with people and they've touched this place of bliss within them, it's usually been stimulated by a life-changing event, a near-death experience, or the arrival of someone that has fairly much matched that consciousness within them, and it's really kicked it off. It's been a huge projector into them, and that journey has begun, and they've felt that bliss. Once someone's felt it, there's no going back, because it's like it changes you forever. And once you've tasted that elixir, you will forever search for that elixir again. Now, most people make the mistake is they search for it outside.
Right.
They go find the next bloke, or they go find the next woman. They go find the next thing to get it, and it gets really painful for them to find that, oh hell, I didn't really come from them. They stimulated it within me, and they have to find it within them next, before they then get their complementary oneness to share it with.
Oh, okay, Lindy, I love this, because this is such a big thing in the healing communities, in the awakening communities. I think definitely in the coaching community as well too, where they talk about like, oh, it's all within you. But I've realized that, and like as above, so is below, so is outside, so within. But like in my own journey, I've touched those really bliss states. You know, I think in the yogic tradition, they call it like the ambrosia. Like I'll never forget it when I was doing yoga in India. I was literally living with yogis at like 13,000 feet. And I remember I had a crack on the inside, and then I actually felt my third eye, like, and then all this, the ambrosia, the nectar of God is what the yogis call it, like came down. And then I literally tasted it. It tasted like ambrosia, honey and almond, and it was so good. And then I went to the state of bliss where I didn't feel my body. I lost all consciousness or sensation of my body. And after having that experience, I only had a glimpse of it for 10 seconds. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I would never need any other human being or anything outside of myself to make me happy again. Like I understood why certain yogis live in caves for like hundreds of years and don't leave. Like I totally got it, but I only got a preview of that. But I have noticed this connection between being able to remain in those bliss states and then who you connect with on the external world. Because then when I went back out in the world and I was doing my soul's work and my life energies were going into a lot of different people and group programs and one-on-one clients, I do feel like those inner resources of bliss, like it is, I don't know, I did see it as being yes, I think we have an infinite supply of it, but how connected we are to that infinite supply, there is something to be said about that, you know, like when I connect with another person who's reached those states of bliss within themselves, like it gets magnified.
Definitely.
So would you say, Lindy, that, you know, it is important, like what do you think about that? I guess in terms of connecting with people who have touched those deeper inner states of bliss within themselves, and does our inner world and the inner world of another person play out?
Absolutely. So what you were talking about there, where you tasted that initial elixir, same happened to me, different routes. So I was psychically aware, working in energy, but not what I call in the heart and spiritually aware till much later. So for me, it came That side of it came around 2010, 2011. Not much difference in time by the sounds of it to you there. And then when you've tasted that, what you were describing then, you had that moment where you felt, oh my God, everything feels different. And I know I never have to have another person to complete me in the same way again. What you were describing there is you tasted your own unification. So well, that doesn't mean to say that you wouldn't want to be with anyone else. It means that you don't need them to fix something inside you anymore. You've become unified. So meeting somebody else that is unified is a huge magnification, because this is where you're into the whole ball game of creation big time. I mean, people can individually create, but if you've got more than one person that is got high levels of unification within themselves, they've integrated that's what they are, and you're both going in the same direction, that's when real true miracles happen. And if you're, let's say, aiming that, or got a collaborative project for particularly service orientated, where you're doing it because you love it, you're passionate, you're joyful about it, but it's also helping people in some way, or you're creating in some way, magnified still further. And this is the whole, again, new relationship paradigm, because what you described there is your whole inner relationship template got upgraded like that. You suddenly became the embodiment of more of your own higher self, more of your own consciousness. And when you've got that, you can't go back as you were before, no matter how hard you try. No one can anywhere in the world. They say, no, that's it, it's changed now. And it's an amazing thing, because once you've experienced it, like I say, it's a gift that keeps on giving. It won't always feel like that for people, because it means change. And when you try and go back as you were before and go back into those habits, it's excruciating. You can't physically do that, because you're not in sync with it anymore, and you never will be. So this is where we get into consciously connecting with someone. And this is where in my work I see somebody might have a life-changing initiation of that elixir. 9 times out of 10 is through a big event, big soul shock thing, often in meeting one person or more than one. One usually kicks it off. I'll be honest, in the work I've been doing, one usually kicks it off. It's not that commonplace that the person ends up with the one that kicked it off. They end up with the next one, or the next one after that. So somebody kicks it off, could be a twin flame, catalyst, soulmate, matching consciousness, ascensionary soulmate, the list goes on. And in some ways it doesn't matter. The person goes through that process of unification, then often another one will come in, a catalyst, just to keep you going, something. And that certainly was that way for me. And then you get to enough where you're in enough of your heart energy that you can, let's say, do that bit on your own. You become the embodiment of it. And then you're really in a position where you get to, I'm going to say, get to choose how you express that with someone. But that sounds very clinical, and it does make me smile, because it's not as clinical as that. It's often at that stage when you least expect it. Someone comes out of left field, and hey, the rest is history. But these connections at that point, these are where it gets really exciting, because you're not then with that person because you need them to compensate for something you feel is missing in you. Like I say, you're already both unified, so it's a whole different kind of relationship, and you are literally, it is what they call that third energy. It is the energy of creation. You don't realize, in a way, what power, what people don't realize, humans, what power they have at their fingertips once they get fully into their heart. They are actually co-creators, and they really are. When you don't know what you're doing with this energy, you can create chaos. Now, I can use myself as an example. I like to do that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm obviously at that stage, and because I keep forgetting I'm waving away a Harry Potter wand in my own personal life, I have to be careful what I'm talking about, because it literally happens, but it happens in a negative way, because I've forgotten that I'm a creator. So I was in session with somebody the other week, and I was saying, oh, yes, it's all right. And I was explaining how the boulder had been put in their path, but they just divert around it, and that was the shadow thing. A lorry pulls up outside and dumps a load of boulders in front of my path outside my physical house, because I was talking about it. The reason I'm on 2 walking sticks now, I was talking to someone else. We were talking about the whole bend the knee, and I was talking about the Masonic shadow thing behind that. 2 hours later, I can walk physically. And I thought, oh God, here we go again. And so I'm really realizing that what I say with passionate and strongly, even if I'm saying it in a way and I'm expressing it not in a joyful way, it's coming true like this. So then I have to say, well, we know for a fact we can do it that way. We know for a fact we can do it this way. So I'm doing that with non-intentionally. If you put your intent behind it and say, okay, this is what I want to create, this is what I'm passionate and joyful about, it can go. And when I'm saying fast, these are things that are happening within hours. These aren't taking weeks, months, or years to show up now. And why? Because we go full circle back to the time we're living in. We are in the now. The now became real. The physical representation of now consciousness became the mass embodiment from January 2020. It's that quantum heart timeline again, which means what was taking months or years is happening now in minutes or hours. So we don't have to be paranoid about our thoughts, but we almost have to realize when you get to within enough quota of your own consciousness,
you got to be
it's
really
showing up.
You got to be really conscious of what you're thinking and saying.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Well, it's so cool because, you know, and I'm actually covering this in the Awakening Intensive that I'm doing in August. There's this distinction between time and space that I'll talk about, and I'll talk about a little bit here. But really, what I'm hearing you say, Lindy, is the old way or 3D way, however you want to say it, was more linear based, like time. And I still see people thinking about this. Oh, I only have 5 hours to get this done, or I only have 30 days to bring this in. But another function of reality that most human beings don't think about is space, inner space.
Yeah.
And time and space, if we look at you know, performance or getting things done or manifesting or whatever we want to call it, time and space. So time would be linear, X plane, space would be Y, you know, vertical plane. And like, that's another function that we have to take aware of. Like when it comes to doing work or manifesting or creating, if you don't have a lot of inner space, a lot of heart capacity or heart space, if you don't have a lot of mental capacity, it can take you it can take you 5 hours to get something, one little thing done. Whereas if you have a heart capacity or a heart space for it, or a mental space for it, you can get so much more done in that linear time of 5 hours. And so I love this question, because whenever, you know, I coach some high performance individuals, and I consider myself a high performer. And so when we think about time and space, or when we think about getting things done or manifesting or creating, humanity, I've seen at the conscious level, like the social collective consciousness, they really forget about that space piece. And so it's really important to have that non-linear emotional space, mental space, and being aware of that when it comes to producing or creating.
Well, I call the space of the heart, I call it like a garden. So when I'm teaching people about creation, because it's like we've been given, like I say, a whole set of instructions, like a new vehicle, like a brand new car. And we haven't learned how to drive the car yet, but it's easy, but we just don't know where all the controls are. We tend to do it unconsciously, like I have been doing first before we do it consciously. And I say that the heart is really like a garden, and you decide, you know, you weed out of that garden all the stuff that's been there for a long time, that's been holding you back, all the sadness, all the heaviness, and all the old programs and patterns. And it takes a while. We weed it out, and gradually it gets more and more refined, you fine tune it until, like I say, your capacity of consciousness within that heart has gone up. So what you're weeding out is the unconscious. You're making the unconscious conscious. And you know, people use these concepts of letting stuff go. Oh, if it were only as easy as that. You know, Sometimes it takes a while to understand what you've got to let go of, or how you've got to let it go, or what it's going to take to get you to let it go. I haven't worked with anyone that's just said, oh, I know, I'm going to let that go today. That's just the concept and the intellect and the brain saying, oh yeah, right, I can do that.
Right.
But as you do, you're the first one, because there's an automatic shifting in your consciousness, your awareness. You don't go back to how you were before. And, if we come full circle again, something that just came to me again about the whole thing where we started here with pain. I can honestly say, had I not had physical pain in the body, I wouldn't be here today. And the reason being, I was an absolute master at leaving the body and disassociating from the body. Part of that was my own spiritual practice, and I found it much easier to be in the bliss states than to be in a physical vehicle trying to attain bliss states. The other reason is I came from a background of really severe trauma. So I learned to disassociate before I was even 3. So I only learned how to stay in my body physically in all these years, in the last 6 or 7 years. Now, there have been side effects of that, because in order to keep me physically here, I'm physically heavier than I'd like to be. But it means that I'm physically aware of my body 24/7, whereas before I was out of it, zipping off, not really wanting to come back in it. So again, you can see again the purpose that has served to keep me actually in the body. And I'm now at a stage where now I'm having to teach my body, okay, I've got it now. I don't need you to remind me in that way now. We can actually, I say, I'm going to use that word, let go. But even for myself, and I've been like working in spiritual arenas for 21 years, I can't just say to myself, yeah, let's let go today, and then tomorrow it's let go. It's like a series of dots in your consciousness all adds up, and then suddenly there's a big bang moment, and then it goes.
I love it.
It just goes, it's sometimes you can just keep looking at it and think, it's like picking at a scab and think, why isn't it? And then something will happen. It doesn't matter what end of the dominoes it comes on. And then all the dots add up, and suddenly they rush together. There literally is a mini big bang, and there's a shift in your own consciousness. I had one of those moments a week ago. Without going into too many details, I was feeling one of the illest I've ever felt in my entire life. And I actually truly got to a point, not just voicing it, where I actually said to Spirit, no, that's me done, really done now. Let me have this as an exit point, let me go. I'm not staying now, I've done my bit. And when you 100% mean it, not just being a drama queen. And for that about half an hour, I really meant it, heart, body and soul. And it's the weirdest thing ever. All my life, I thought I'd hit the bottom, but I didn't hit the bottom till last week.
Yeah.
As soon as I hit the bottom, something in me let go, because I wasn't holding on to it anymore. I said, that's it, I'm done now. And I just threw it all up in the air. I don't even know all of what I threw up in the air, but suddenly someone switched a light on that wasn't on before. And I suddenly felt really different and empowered. And it was like I just started to leave a timeline I didn't even know I was on and go on to another one. The second I made that decision, without going into details, loads of extraordinary, amazing, synchronistic things happened. Amazing things I can't share here at the moment, but I will share later on as they come fully to fruition. And I thought, oh my God, it was like the second that all that went, and there was nothing I was holding on to, which I didn't even know I was, I moved on to another timeline in my own consciousness. I said to Spirit, this timeline is done for me. That's not my reality, thank you. And suddenly I wasn't on that one anymore. I didn't have to die to do it. Not physically. Anyway.
but it does. I mean, I love this, Lindy. So really, I mean, one of the coaches that I've worked with for the last year, his name's Neal, and he's been doing transformational work for 4 decades, and he's just a real powerhouse. And really, when that was, he really showed me a whole new level of what it means to transform and heal. I had a number of similar moments with him where it was like there was all these things in my body and my subconscious that had been trying to align. And suddenly he would say one thing or jab at my ego a certain way, and we'd be in a session, and then I'd be like, oh, and then all of a sudden, like everything would light and connect. And he calls it I'm dissolving right now. He would call it the moment of insight, like the moment of insight where things that are in your consciousness, your awareness, your being, things that you didn't even know you were trying to figure out start to come together. But then what's so amazing is when they come together, suddenly it changes your own identity and what you call as myself. And it puts you on it can put you on a totally different trajectory, and it can put you in a totally different mental and emotional space. And the real cool thing about this, and this is what I love about real transformational work, is when you have that moment, you don't remember who you were before that moment. It's gone.
Exactly.
It's gone. And
it's
so
that divine amnesia, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that divine amnesia you literally come down with, so that you're just aware of little old you in this reality, and then it's suddenly the whole world expands again. But it's that same kind of thing. And it's so funny because when you were talking about that, you literally started to disappear on camera, and it all went broken up. I thought, oh, look, he's changing his frequency. He's going, and then he came back in again as you were talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to add a little prediction for you here, because I can kind of sense that working with you. I know there's so much more to come for you. There's a lot of good things to come for you yet. I can feel that, you're on this fast track to, you really are. Lots of things going to come for you yet. I can feel that.
Thanks, Lindy.
Yeah, very, very, very clearly. Yeah, it's really exciting.
It is. It's an exciting time. I think it's exciting for me. It's exciting for everyone on the planet. I think that's really why I do the transformational work that I do, because I see all around in the world so many human beings with anxiety, concern, or worries. And I'm like, oh, you're just in the transformation process and your ego doesn't even know it. And you don't have safe space to hold you through it or bring you through it. And it's like so many beings are actually trying to evolve, and the planet's trying to evolve, but they don't know the real transformation process. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people where, they finally just get in conversation with me or in my presence, and then they'll just have those insights, and then they'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize like all of this I was trying to figure out. And it's like, yeah, you're just waking up to who you really are. You're waking up beyond ego, beyond identity. You're waking up into your beingness and your moment by moment expression of a divine self through a temporary human form. And that's really scary for people, because it does change your life and things do shift and your reality can change really, really quickly. But I really see, if I want to call the next level of human being like a version 2.0 of human, it would be someone who moves through the world not from a place of I need to control my life in this way, but from a place of what does the world need from me and want from me? And I know that I'm always taken care of no matter what. And I can fall forward into that moment by moment and trust that fully. And
there's something that's so wonderful. And there's something about us, isn't it, that we take it all so seriously. And yet we're not going to get out of here alive. And it's also temporary. And it's all happening at the same time. But we get so tied up with our own identity. I think our identity is the biggest stumbling block in all of our egos. So many people fall there because they get so entangled by the perception of who they are, and it threatens by anything that kind of threatens that. It's the biggest area of change within me. I now don't put any, let's say, parameters, shall we say, on the expansion of consciousness at all, because I have seen things now every week actually which would be mind-blowing. And when they used to happen, they were mind-blowing, but now it's become normal for me. So I don't take it personally. I'm a super sensitive soul and empathic, but I don't really take it personally, because I just know that I'm not tied up with the identity of who I am. I don't take that side of it personally. You know, I've witnessed and seen so many things, and this year, for a lot of us, has been a very tough year. It's been a very tough year for me, and there was a lot of personal loss in my life this year as well. But again, through that, you know, I've my consciousness could have just closed down, but it's expanded as a result of it. And I've seen the living, breathing proof of what happens over the other side, and you know, more this year than I've ever seen before. And you know, this is another thing. As your awareness and perception changes and expands, you see more, not just of yourself, but of everything in the world in a different way, and more than you saw before. This is how, in the end, those shadow forces, the shadow is coming down. It's coming out and integrated within us. It's coming down globally. And the reason this is being is because as people see through the eyes of the heart, they see what's really happening. And they really want to exist within themselves and in a world that it expresses love and compassion and unification, and not torture or trafficking or pedophilia or Satanism or malevolent extraterrestrials or enslavement to humanity, and the list goes on. That once they have to see it for themselves. You know, there was a point in my career where I could have really easily 20 years ago not gone the spiritual route and gone the truth-telling conspiracy route, which I have so many all-time heroes in that field, I can't tell you. But once I went through that spiritual awakening myself, I realized the way for me was to help people come into who they were so they could see it for themselves and make their decisions accordingly. So I thought that was the way for me to go. But we are, you know, this extraordinary things about the time we're living in is now we're going to see the physical results of this. It's no longer woo-woo and metaphysical.
Right.
We're doing it physically in the world for us, but in the actual world. And like I say, you know, people's consciousness is going to be really blown crazily open. Because you imagine if you believe the world is a certain way all your life, and you act accordingly, and you identify with that again, and then over a 48-hour window, all that is proven physically not to be the case. Some people are just going to blow wide open and just be in a state of, oh my God, bliss. Others are going to be in a state of, oh my, I just can't get my head around it. We have a saying, you have to lose your head to go into the heart.
Yeah.
I mean, you do really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It seems like you're going crazy to lose it.
You know, one of my favorite things to do it. And guys, if you have any questions for Lindy, we're going to start taking a Q&A out here. Do you have time for a Q&A, Lindy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Guys, if you have any questions for Lindy, start putting them in the comments section there, and we'll start taking those. I do want to just add to that. It's one of my first favorite things to do whenever I first sit down with someone in coaching. I always ask them, I say, if you could look out at the world with no thought or no emotion, no narrative of how you think the world works or how you see yourself, how would that change your life if you lived from that state 100% of the time? And it's really mind-blowing, because when you live beyond the world of thought, beyond the narratives or what we think is going on in the world, or beyond narratives or identities of ourself, we're actually more in reality. like that's actually reality.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And I see that's where everyone's moving to.
Yeah. And it's that balancing act again, isn't it? Between not being completely identified with one's identity, but at the same time, seeing one's mind and personality as an integrated part of them. So I went through part of my development where I was almost, there was almost a war between the head and the heart. And then I went through that stage and realized, oh no, it doesn't have to be that way at all. And obviously, if I didn't have the personality that I had, I wouldn't be able to share my experiences for a start, or explain them in an explainable way if my personality was largely absent. So again, it's that teaching, you know, those question marks over teachings, that one has to be living one's life 7 days a week, cross-legged on a hill, and that is their spiritual practice, which it is for someone. I'm very much about the spiritual practice of 7 days a week, restroom, store, picking kids up from school, walking your walk in a physical reality, which, let's face it, 95% of us are in. How does one go through this in their physical life? And of course, we are all, those of us that are going through it, living, breathing proof of that. You know, like I say, what am I saying? The good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, some of it we're not going to feel comfortable with. Some of it we're going to feel really comfortable with. It will get to a stage where the comfortability is I call it the predominant resting state. That's that bliss-like state is normal. It's so sad, really, that for so many millennia on this planet, we haven't even realized we could access that, let alone that that's normal to feel that childlike joy and amazement. And that living the way we've been living isn't. That's down to programming and malevolent interference in human development. So all that's coming back. That's what the quantum timeline is about. It's here. It's now real, and we're seeing the real evidence of it. So
beautiful,
unrecognizable times that we're living in now, phenomenal times. You know, everyone that's here at this time witnessing this, going through this, seeing it, you know, we're kind of all meant to be here doing this stuff. And like I say, it's an extraordinary time to be alive. And sometimes I think we have to remind ourselves of that when our governments are doing certain things and our world is doing certain things, and we know that within every fiber of our being that where that's coming from. And we just have to sort of like say, no, okay, that's fine, it's just part of the process. Let's just keeping in our heart, going for the truth, speaking our truth. Beautiful. And we'll all get there. We will get there. This is all part of it. Nothing's gone wrong globally.
Right.
It's all gone right.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Lindy, I'm going to bring up some questions here. We got a lot of great questions coming through. I'm going to go to Dorita. Hey, Dorita. Dorita's question is, do you think we are at the path where suffering is not needed for humanity to transform? It's a great question.
I think that's a great question. I feel that we're not at that point at the moment because there's not enough of us there yet. But I feel we will get to a point where human suffering in the way we understand it now is largely absent. Because if you ask me honestly, I don't feel human suffering is a natural remit of what humans are supposed to experience. My real true gut feeling on every sense of the word here is there's been a lot of programming involved. Let's go back to what I originally said about, let's say, Jesus on the cross and torture and suffering and having to go through so much pain. And in all the big religious teachings, a lot of them mirror this kind of thing. I feel a lot of it's programming. I don't feel we're there yet, but we will be there. And I don't feel we will have suffering in the way that we understand it now. And I don't feel, we can take positives out of everything, but I think we go back to that bliss state that Jared and myself were talking about. We are heading into a way of being and the world that we create and remain upon, where that suffering as we understand it now is largely absent. But we're not quite there yet, but we're moving into it now as I speak. It's happening now. Beautiful. In real time.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks. I love that, Lindy. I think that's great. And I think I'll just add to that. I really I think pain may be inevitable in the sense that pain and pleasure are natural experiences, but suffering, to me, the distinction between pain and suffering is suffering is trying to avoid pain, trying to stay away from it. And but it's like, no, mental and emotional and physical pain, like those things are real. But I found that as we be okay, more as we learn to not run from that, like when we try to run from it, it creates more suffering. At least that's what I
totally agree. Yeah.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to Yasmin's question here, and Brittany had something similar as well. She says, I have this painful experience in my shoulders, especially on the left side of my neck, and I literally don't understand. So we had Yvette Rose on the other day. Lindy, are you familiar with Yvette's work?
No, I've definitely heard her name. I
Okay,
definitely know the name.
she does. She's the founder of Metaphysical Anatomy Technique, and she does. She really explores the connection between the spirit and the body, and how pain
Yeah.
manifests. So I'd love to get your take on what you think pain in the shoulder and in the neck area is. What that's.
Well, again, let's say this is my interpretation, and when I'm interpreting, I'm slightly feeling into this. It's just a natural part of who I am. That's why I'm looking off to the left, because I get a lot of my information in through the
Me
left
too.
ear. So I put my feelers out and change tack immediately there. So my gut feeling with this particular lady is that it's showing around those areas. Usually there is an emotional component, because we're humans and we have emotions as part of who we are, that let's say translates, or part of your body takes on and keeps hold of. And this is something I've learned over my life as well. Around that area of when we're coming into neck and shoulder, especially on the left side there, that's usually to do with responsibility, like carrying the weight of the world, feeling like one is taking a lot on, or has to take a lot on, or has to have the full responsibility for something. These are things that are at very deep levels. They're not on the surface where we're even consciously aware of them. And they usually show up in the physical body, let's say, as the last resort. So they start out in the etheric body, they work their way in, and eventually translates physically. What I would say though, so just to summarize there, it often shows up in that area of the body to do with literally carrying the weight of the world, carrying the weight of a family, being responsible, feeling the responsibility is all on you. But if we take it a bit further, how the body is being rerouted at the moment, the masculine and feminine energy within is being lined up. Often the left side of the body is connected with one's past, let's say past lives or realities, but one's past in this life, and imbalances can show up physically there when that needs ironing out. We are living at a time where the physical body is becoming the physical embodiment of these things. So those things that maybe we would have got away with before are now coming up loud and clear, and they're showing up physically in the body. So what I would say is have a look, if any of that makes sense to you, have a look at where in your life, if you're aware, maybe you'll be aware for the first time, where those kind of emotions have been sitting in the background for so long that you didn't even realize they've been sitting in there for years. Look there first and see if there's an emotional component to it. Also, like I say, the time we're living in, we are feeling it in the bodies when something certainly, isn't quite aligned. I mean, don't forget the body is trying to line up in a different way to those new blueprints. Try things like what we call Epsom salts, or salt in the water if you can get into baths and things like that. Actually ask your body, your body has its own consciousness, and actually say to your body, okay, what is it you're trying to tell me? Sometimes I've seen things come up in people's physical bodies because they've hit a point in their timeline now where in another reality something happened to that area of the body. So a simple example, someone has a car crash in another reality, and when they hit that age in this one, if it's a bleed through, which means the two consciousnesses have got slightly confused and are interacting again, if your body thinks it's happening again and takes on them symptoms. There's loads of complexities to it, but a simple place to start is ask your body what your body wants. Ask it what it's holding there. Look at the emotional component. In all the years I've worked in these fields, emotional components seem to be responsible for pretty much 95% of all what shows up in the human body.
Right.
And we don't even realize it. So
Yeah.
start there, have a look there. Beautiful. And go from there.
I love that. I love that, Lindy. Yeah, the way that I read this, because I used to have a lot of pain there, and this is the main wound of the day. We have Tareen, Brittany, and a couple other individuals who say that they all have this. So I'll share with you guys my experience, and then we'll ask one more question here. When I had a lot of pain in the back, or in my shoulder area, in my chest, and on the left side. So the left side is the heart, and the back area is left side is the heart. It's feminine line energetically. And if there's pain in the back shoulder, I would say that that's feminine energy support. So having your emotional needs met. That's the way that I
Yeah.
interpreted it. Because as soon as I started getting my feminine energy needs met, that shoulder pain started to disintegrate, and I felt more
Yeah.
supported. So guys, if you're having any shoulder pain in the back left, I would say that that's not, you're not having your emotional needs met, which is pretty common for a lot of quote unquote spiritual people. There's a lot of bypass.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the body is just trying to communicate it. And this is something I learned the hard way. I got so much body pain for so long before I was the last one to realize, hold on a minute. I kind of was bypassing myself for so many years, it was automatic. So, is really look at the emotional component to it, and sometimes we are aware of these things and sometimes we're not. They're very deep seated. One of the easiest things to do is actually put your hand or put something in that area when you're communicating with that area of your body, or actually pretend you've got a microphone to it and say, what are you trying to tell me? And sometimes I know I found a big one for me was actually telling myself I was safe, because I didn't realize I didn't feel safe for the first 25 years of my life. I lived with extreme violence, and that never actually felt safe. So my body was in fight or flight all the time, and learned to hold on to that. So literally saying, actually, you are safe. And then my body would say, actually, yeah, right, I'm sure I am. And I'm actually having an argument with my own body, at that time, and trying to reassure myself, you can't kid your body. You can't tell it something it doesn't really feel. So then you say, okay, what would it take to make you feel safe? Where does this come from? And actually having an online communication. Try not to be afraid of your own body. Take it from one that went through years of being petrified of my own body and pain. Try not to be afraid of your own body. Just communicate with your body and say, and you're absolutely right. Left side is often to do with past in this life, past experiences, past stuff. Actually, it also connects to other realities and past, and connects to the feminine side of the expression of your own energy, or outside of you, feminine. But it's go for the emotional component first. Doesn't matter which key we use to throw that door open, just go for that side first. Once you get it open, a lot of other things will probably come. You'll have your aha moment. Oh my God, I didn't even realize that moment. And you'll know it's right, because you'll feel a huge amount of relief in that area, and hopefully complete release.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Lindy. That's great. I'm going to go to the last question here. And Brittany, I promised you I'd answer this on the live, so I'm glad you brought it up again. This is a great question. I actually made a video on cord cutting years ago. Brittany says, Jared and Lindy, I'm curious what your thoughts are about cord cutting. Do you have techniques for it? I love this. This is such a fascinating question to me. I'd love to hear your perspective on this, Lindy, and then I'll share.
Yeah. I think in certain circumstances, cord cutting is extremely effective and extremely powerful. I haven't had to do that with anyone for quite some time yet. Nobody's asked me to do it for a long time now. I did used to do it quite commonly, but only if the circumstances were, like, say, allowable, and let's say with the participation of the person involved, and always, let's say, for the highest outcome and highest purposes. It's extremely powerful. The most common technique I use for it, like I say, I haven't done it for a while now because it hasn't been called upon to do it, would to be taking people into transparent, like, pyramid scenario, having them in a stand in the center of that pyramid with a circle of chalk around them, so they're standing in a circle in the pyramid. The person or people, multiple, that they feel they've got cords running to, having them in their own individual little circles, and then having to look, obviously I'm clairvoyant and psychic, so it helps a medium, what cords are running where. Now sometimes we have cords to people and they're supposed to be there. Sometimes we have very malevolent cords running, so depending on what the circumstances are, removing those cords accordingly. I personally do healing on where they've been removed, so fill that space with that light and that love and compassion there. And like I say, depending on the initial thing that caused them, cords can reform. So it depends where the person's at emotionally and the person that is cording to them. But It can be a very, very valuable technique. Like I say, I haven't been asked to do it for ages now. I have done it when it's been needed, and I've actually done it myself personally when it's been needed, but not for a very long time now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that thought and that experience that you shared there, Lindy. Really, how I see cord cutting is, first, I'll say that I think we sense the energetic realm is, it's not actually real and physical yet. It's playing out and connected to the physical, but it's not manifesting in the physical. And so I've noticed that any times that I've felt everything energetically, highly empathic and things like that, they were things that I needed to address, that some part of my being was afraid to address or not go into in regular physical reality. So like for instance, empaths, they feel out the entire energetic environment around them so they can feel safe. But really, when you know how to speak your truth and, draw boundaries with your voice, you don't need to feel out the whole energetic environment, because your voice draws clear boundaries, and you don't have to have walls up over your heart and then, feeling everything like that. So really, when I see cord cutting, I see it's more of like a stream, because our chakras are streams of consciousness and are all vibrating at different frequencies. So I think most people like to think of it as like a cut, but really it's kind of like a stream, at least how I think of it. It's like, if you put a lot of energy in that direction, that consciousness builds a flow. Like, this is why, sex, that most people, I mean, they don't treat it like the sacred, that act that it is. If you're pumping a lot of sexual consciousness energy into another human being, and they're taking and like that, they have a bad inner world and they have emotional trauma and things that they haven't dealt with. Well, it's not that you can't just like cut the cord there and then all of a sudden you're free of all that. Like, I know for me, I'll never forget it when I was, still I would say, having my quote unquote twin flame experience years ago. I remember I had so much stuff that I had to take care of on the inner world that I hadn't taken care of yet. And my partner at the time, after we broke up, I mean, I could feel energetically how connected I was to her, just because, we were intimate so many times. And so I remember being like, man, I just want to cut this cord. And I did all the techniques, but I still felt everything that she was doing and how she had moved on and tried to cope with the breakup. So I would say, when it comes to cord cutting, I think we would like to make it as quickly as just a cut, but I would say it's more of a stream of consciousness that eventually the track of energy will run itself out. And I do believe that we can reverse that track of energy and pull it back in. Like, for me, I practice, I practice a lot of tantric techniques where I pull my energies and my mental energies, my emotional energies, my sexual energies back into my inner space and back up the spine. So it's not as easy as cord cutting, but there are ways to reverse, I believe, that energetic process that's been pushed out in a much swifter manner.
And I would say again, I agree. There's a lot of, it depends with people with their emotional component again. And the stream of consciousness is entirely accurate. Where that stream of consciousness becomes semi-physical is as it drops to the lower realms of frequency. It becomes semi-physical, like thought forms become no longer wisp-like, but semi-solid. So when they are semi-solid, they can be taken up semi-solid, but that stream of consciousness can re-engage again if the intent's strong enough, or the person that's connected to them is still got the same emotional contact, let's say, setup. That's how it can reform again. Because you're absolutely right, on those high levels, it's streams of consciousness. Where it comes to twin flames, whole different ball game. I've never been asked to cut cords for twin flames, and I've never done that, because actually it cannot be done in the same way, because there is a merging or a process of osmosis and a blurring of the boundaries between spiritual and soul energy then. So how one gradually, which is why it's so painful for so many people, particularly when they go apart, let's say permanently. And it was excruciating for me when I went through that all those years ago as well, a long time ago now. So I didn't handle that, let's say, cord cutting, and I don't for twin flames either ever go cord cutting on that front, not for twin flames. But how they find relief and go through that is literally as they become more unified within themselves and more into their own hearts. It becomes easier and easier, and they become less engaged and less aware and far less painful. And that word suffering again, pain and suffering, we come full circle as they become more unified within themselves. And certainly for me, that's exactly what happened experientially. And what I see all over the world is as we let go of our own stuff and we don't run from what that is, and we face it and we integrate it, and we come more into our own, it's not that terrible, excruciating pain in the same way. It's very different, that experience, because it's part of a template to balance one's masculine and feminine energy, to become more conscious. It's a main ascension template, obviously. So you can't cut off your own inner unification. You can do your stuff so that the human emotional component isn't excruciating anymore, but you can't cut your life force off for your own unification. That's where it's very slightly different. And where a lot of people get, to bring it full circle, where a lot of people get into pain and suffering with that, because they will look to the other person, let's say the twin flame, to come back or to make it better for them. And of course, they're not going to make it better for them. They've got to learn to access that bliss state and that inner state of unification within themselves. When they look inside, then anything and everything is possible. But it's not if they keep looking outside for it again. It almost brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? At the beginning of it. Yes. You've got to look inside. As corny as it sounds, when you go through these things, you all come back to this in the end. Yep. We now understand what all the esoteric teachings are about, So yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and yet all of that is connected with what we're talking about here. That twin flame template is an ascension template. It is one of those ways that people become more unified. And again, we will see as the years play out here that it won't be a painful process of suffering or misery any longer, but it will be conscious connection. We're already seeing it. The twin flame template would have done its work. It's already happening. We're seeing conscious connections, what we call matching consciousness, which never would have happened had that template not been there in the first place.
I love it. I love it. Lindy, I think this is a perfect place to end. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time and your energy.
Thank you. It's been an absolute joy. You're a wonderful energy. I absolutely love it. You're doing some great work. So it's been lovely to work with you again.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, are you doing any programs or anything like this right now? Is anything?
Not at the moment. I've had a little quiet period for the last 2 or 3 weeks, literally trying to walk my walk. Well, I've not been able to walk. So that's been quite. I'm still working, still doing sessions. So all of that is still going ahead. So people can find me on my website, which is raisingreality.com. So I'm still doing those, not doing any workshops or anything at the moment. But like I say, things are changing very quickly. So that's where you can find me. I'm quite booked up at the moment. I haven't got anything till September, which is a good thing, I think, in the times that we're living in. But it's been an absolute joy. Lovely to work with you again. Absolute pleasure, Jared. You look after yourself.
Thanks, Lindy. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome. Yeah, loads of love. Take care, darling.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us, you guys. That's all we got for this time. I do have some more interviews coming up later on in the week. We will have Christine Breeze. She's the founder of Metapsychiatry Institute, and we have some other guests as well. So be looking out for those. Please download the free Awaken Life course. It's literally right here in this link. If you haven't yet, Also, we will be starting the Awakened Live Intensive in August 12th. So that's 2 weeks away. If you guys are interested in that, please feel free to reach out and connect. It will be a powerful, fun, enjoyable program where we will be exploring our own inner worlds and our relationships to the things that make our life most valuable. That's all I have for this time. Thanks so much for joining me, you guys. Tune in soon, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.